Next up, we have Armaldo. This armored shrimp thing is one of the 2 fossil Pokemon found in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. It's also been a fixture on Steven Stone's team throughout the various games he's appeared in. Today, we're going over Armaldo's success or lack thereof in the competitive scene. And so, we ask, how good was Armaldo actually? And in this video, we'll be going over these competitive formats. Armaldo didn't have enough usage to be deemed OU in its debut generation, but was far too powerful for UU, so it wound up in the limbo of borderline. However, despite not being a true OU Pokemon, it did have a legitimate niche in the tier thanks to its access to a highly effective move that had very low distribution in Gen 3, Knockoff. Removing leftovers in a game with permanent sandstorm around every corner was incredibly useful. This meant that while Suicune destroyed Armaldo one-on-one, it certainly wouldn't want to switch into it. Even sand-immune Pokemon like Skarmory, Swampert, and Metagross didn't appreciate losing their leftovers, as they relied on them for passive recovery. Armaldo also had access to another excellent move in Rapid Spin, but unfortunately it was illegal alongside Knockoff. Had that not been the case, it would have been quite good. However, given the choice between the two, players went with the more unique option in Knockoff, which came to define Armaldo's role in the tier. It was difficult to fit and was thus niche overall, but when employed on certain stall teams, it could be incredibly nasty to deal with. It had the amazing utility of being one of the best Snorlax counters in the game. None of Snorlax's moves hit it particularly hard, and Snorlax absolutely hated losing its leftovers in Sandstorm, and Armaldo slowly chipped it down with Seismic Toss. But wait, wouldn't cursed Snorlax sets just boost up and eventually KO Armaldo? So you would think, until Armaldo whipped out the first move everyone gets rid of on their in-game Pokemon, Harden. Boosting its defense ensured that Snorlax could absolutely never beat it. Some players even traded in Harden for Mimic, which was functionally identical to Harden against Snorlax, as taking Snorlax's curse allowed it to boost its defense. Mimic also had the benefit of potentially stealing useful moves like an opposing Skarmory's spikes. Of course, this was just a bonus. Armaldo's main purpose was shutting Snorlax down harder than just about anything else. Snorlax couldn't even fish for a critical hit because of Armaldo's ability Battle Armor, which made it uncrittable. To make matters even better, unlike most Snorlax counters, Armaldo was not vulnerable to Dugtrio or Magneton. This meant it completely ruined the trap team centered around Snorlax. Now keep in mind, Armaldo was very niche. It was definitely more difficult to slap onto teams than its already fairly niche fellow knockoff user Hariyama, who had the benefit of countering Tier King Tyranitar. However, its niche was more than legitimate, and any player who had encountered it could attest to just how infuriating it could be to face, making it worth building a team with and even worth using in an occasional tournament. Now, Armaldo did have an appealing base 120 attack stat alongside Sword Stance and an excellent stab combination in Rock and Bug, but its low speed and weaknesses meant it wasn't worth much as an offensive Pokemon. It actually doled out more damage over the course of a game with its defensive set, and that's just how powerful Knockoff was. Armaldo was niche, but nevertheless, it was a legitimate Pokemon in Advanced OU. The 4th generation hit Armaldo hard. Its defensive profile couldn't keep up with the faster paced play between Stealth Rock, new boosting items, and higher base power moves. It certainly wasn't going to find a niche in OU again, and UU was challenging for it as well. Knockoff and Rapid Spin were legal, and in conjunction with being able to set up Stealth Rock itself, Armaldo seemed to have the potential for an interesting support niche. The problem was that Donphan also had access to all 3 of these moves, and was a much better Pokemon as a whole, with more useful defensive utility, being able to counter monsters like Aggron and Rhyperior while resisting Stealth Rock as opposed to being weak to it. Armaldo didn't have any other notable defensive utility, making it a worse choice than the overall superior Donphan. Armaldo couldn't go on the offensive either, as anything it could muster was thoroughly outclassed by Rhyperior. There was no reason to use Armaldo, which meant nobody did, and thus it dropped to NU, and even there, it struggled to get usage. As a defensive rock type, there was little reason to use it over the amazing Regirock, who wasn't Stealth Rock weak. If one wanted Rapid Spin under Stealth Rocker, Sandslash was terrific and came with the benefit of being solid against Regirock. Was there hope for Armaldo as an offensive rock type now that Rhyperior was no longer around to outclass it? No. Because here Rhydon was around to outclass it. Armaldo wasn't a bad Pokemon in its own right, but its Stealth Rock weakness was too great a hindrance for it to be as consistent as its competition. Thus, it was usually passed over in favor of the more reliable rock types in Gen 4 NU. Most of the time, Armaldo was thoroughly meager in Gen 5 NU. It struggled struggled to spin against the tier's ghost types, with Golurk resisting both its stabs, and Miss Dravis's bulk bolstered by Eviolite. Plus, it just struggled to find opportunity to begin with, given its miserable speed stat. However, Armaldo was not doomed to uselessness, as thanks to a new ability gifted by the Dream World, it had an extremely specific but potentially worthwhile niche. That ability was Swift Swim of all things. With it, Armaldo proved itself to be a key component of dedicated rain teams. The style was rare in NU, meaning Armaldo wasn't getting a ton of usage, but when it was, it performed. Rain doubling Armaldo's speed and boosting its Aqua Tail meant that it could now easily break past both ghosts that would otherwise bother it, thus allowing it to pull off a successful rapid spin, especially since it could no longer be outsped and KO'd by would-be faster offensive Pokemon like Soft. Not having to deal with Stealth Rock made things easier for Armaldo's rain-abusing teammates like Ludicolo and Gorbis, as their Life Orb recoil wouldn't lead them into priority KO ranges as quickly. Rain teams also struggled to weather assaults from notable NU Pokemon like Kangaskhan, Tauros, and Regice. Pun very much intended. And in Regice's case, they sometimes struggled to threaten it out and make it take Stealth Rock damage. Armaldo was immensely helpful against all three of these Pokemon. Granted, it wasn't the best switch into Regice's Bolt Beam combination, but it certainly scared it out, and the extra 25% from Stealth Rock Regice would take when switching back in would make it easier for Armaldo's other rain-abusing teammates like Seismitoad to overwhelm it. In the larger scheme of things, it was a small niche, but it was one that would reward a player more experienced with the intricacies of Black and White NU. If nothing else, its niche was a unique one. A non-water type Swift Swimmer, providing crucial support for rain teams, certainly wasn't something you saw every day. All in all, Armaldo's Gen 5 was small, but it had its own little thing that nothing else could do, and that was okay. Generation 6 adding PU, the new tier below NU, was a blessing for Armaldo. Instead of becoming obsolete due to power creep, it found new life in the new lowest tier. It loved the buff to knockoff, as its newfound power made it an offensive weapon as well as a great utility move. It also helped Armaldo pull off Rapid Spin, as ghost types like Gourgeist XL and Miss Dravis didn't want to eat that hit. Speaking of Rapid Spin, it was excellent in the Age of the Fog, as it meant that Armaldo's team could clear the field of the opposing team's hazards without having to give up their own. It had some flexibility in terms of its moveset too. Its main set focusing on providing rapid spin utility, and thanks to its consistency, it was the most used variant that defined most of Armaldo's niche in the tier. However, it wasn't restricted to that set. It could also take up the mantle of Swords Dance Swift Swim Sweeper. Try saying that 5 times fast. Anyway, it no longer focused on using Swift Swim to get off spin and support its teammates doing so. This time around, it was in for its own sweep, aided significantly by the excellent addition of Aqua Jet to its repertoire, preventing revenge kills from Pokemon like Choice Scarf Mr. Mime. It also had plenty of opportunity to grab a Swords Dance, given how much it terrified several defensive staples such as Roselia. Even if Armaldo didn't sweep on its own, it bust open a huge hole for a fellow Swift Swim sweeping teammate like Gorbis or Golduck to capitalize on. All in all, Armaldo was a good Pokemon in ORAS PU. Sure, its Stealth Rock weakness held it back, and it wasn't metagame defining or anything, but both its sets were solid performers, and thus it was a legitimate choice. Somewhat predictably, Generation 7 was not a kind one for our Mantis Shrimp friend. Armaldo had been pretty good in the generation prior, yes, but the innate trouble its typing brought meant it wouldn't be able to withstand Power Creep's domino effect, bringing better overall Pokemon down into PU. Hitmonchan dropped into the tier and instantly made Armaldo obsolete. Why use a slow Rapid Spinner weak to Stealth Rock when you could use a decently fast Rapid Spinner resistant to Stealth Rock? Hitmonchan not only handled the common Stealth Rockers that dumpstered Armaldo, but was also superior in both defensive and offensive roles, and thus there was really no reason to use Armaldo over it. However, just to really ensure that there was no hope for Armaldo, there was a second excellent Rapid Spinner that also ranked among the metagame's best Pokemon. Alolan Sandslash, who didn't resist Stealth Rock like Hitmonchan did, but its neutrality was far better than Armaldo's weakness. Plus, in case you didn't like that Hitmonchan couldn't set up Stealth Rock or use knockoff like Armaldo could, then Alolan Sandslash could fill those voids easily. Alolan Sandslash was also a better offensive Swords Dance user. With 2 top tier Pokemon completely outclassing anything Armaldo could do, it had no usage whatsoever, and thus dropped to the no Pokemon's land of untiered. And that's it. So how good was Armaldo actually? Well, it had a surprisingly useful, if not limited niche in its debut generation's OU, despite being a BL Pokemon. But once Stealth Rock was introduced in the generation following, the jig was up and Armaldo began its painful tumble through the lowest depths of the tiering rung. It had several great traits, but its competition was able to match those traits without bearing the crippling burden of a Stealth Rock weakness, meaning it was just about always outclassed. Now, it did find some nice small niches in Gen 5 NU and Gen 6 PU, PU, but they were fairly small in the grand scheme of things, and it wound up not being able to maintain even a PU ranking in Gen 7. We currently don't know how things will shake out for Armaldo if and when it returns in Generation 8, but hopefully the addition of heavy duty boots to ignore Stealth Rock and the smaller Pokedex will allow it to find a niche in PU or maybe even NU once again. Thanks for watching, everyone, and as always, if you liked the video and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe to False Swipe Gaming for more weekly Pokemon content, and in the comments I want to know, what do you think about competitive Armaldo? How would you improve it? What would you give it to make it at least NU again, or maybe even better? Whatever it is, let me know in the comments. Also, thank you so much to our patrons for continued support of our videos, and thank you to everyone else watching as well. And follow my crew on these social media platforms, and that's all I got. See you next time, everyone.